You had the idea 3 weeks ago. Maybe it was a business, a creative project, something you wanted to build or write or start. You felt it clearly, that specific clarity that only comes in quiet moments, when the noise dies down long enough for you to hear yourself think. And then life reminded you where you actually are. The bills are piling up. The relationship is strained. The news is relentless. Your job feels unstable. Your sleep is broken. Your head is full of everything that could go wrong, and somewhere in the middle of all that, you made a quiet, reasonable-sounding decision. Not now. When things calm down, when I have more time, more money, more certainty. When the ground stops shaking, so you put the idea somewhere safe. A note on your phone, a folder on your desktop, the back of your mind where good intentions go to wait. And here you are, waiting. The thing is, it doesn't feel like giving up. It feels responsible, mature even. You're not abandoning your dream. You're being realistic. You're prioritizing. You're surviving. That's what you tell yourself anyway. But somewhere underneath that story, there's a quieter voice. One that suspects the calm you're waiting for isn't coming. That suspects you've been here before, waiting for the right conditions, and that the conditions never quite arrived. That voice is telling you something important. This is about learning to listen to it. Here's what's actually happening when you decide to wait for stability before you build. Your brain is running a very old program. It's called threat detection, and it evolved to keep you alive in environments where danger was physical, immediate, and real. When the brain perceives chaos, financial pressure, relationship tension, social uncertainty, it activates the same response it would if you were genuinely in danger. Heart rate up. Focus narrows. The future shrinks to the next few hours. In survival mode, creation feels frivolous. And that's by design. This is called cognitive tunneling, the brain's tendency to consume nearly all of its bandwidth managing the immediate threat, leaving almost nothing for long-term thinking, creativity, or construction. The psychologist Eldar Shafir spent years studying what scarcity does to the mind, and what his research suggests is striking. Scarcity of money, of time, of certainty doesn't just preoccupy the mind, it borrows from it. It appears to reduce your effective cognitive capacity in ways researchers are still mapping. So you're not lazy, you're not weak. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, protect you by keeping you small, still, and reactive during perceived crisis. But here's the trap. The brain can't distinguish between a threat that lasts 3 seconds and one that lasts 3 years. It applies the same emergency protocol to a charging predator as it does to a slow economic downturn. And when the threat is chronic, when life is consistently uncertain, that protocol never turns off. You end up permanently waiting for a safety that a survival brain is incapable of feeling, even when it arrives. The faulty logic goes like this: stability first, then creation. But stability, for most people, is not a season that arrives. It's a story we tell ourselves about some future that keeps receding. The ground is always shaking, a little or a lot. The question was never whether conditions are perfect. The question is whether you're going to build on imperfect ground or not build at all. Let me tell you what happens when you keep waiting. In the short term, the idea fades. Not dramatically. It doesn't disappear overnight. It just gets a little quieter each week. The urgency softens. The excitement gets replaced by something more muted. A vague sense that you had something once, and it's slipping. And then something more insidious happens. You start to identify as someone who almost did things. Someone with potential that never quite materialized. And here's what you need to understand about identity. It compounds. Every time you choose an action, you're not just losing the project. You're casting a vote for a version of yourself. Someone who waits, who defers, who needs the stars to align before they move. And the saddest part is this: the chaos doesn't stop while you wait. Life doesn't hold still out of respect for your timing. The crisis that made you pause will be followed by another. And during all of it, the waiting, the deferring, the surviving, the world keeps moving. Other people are building in the middle of their mess. Not because their mess is smaller than yours, but because they stopped believing that the mess was the reason to stop. Here's the real cost. It's not the project you didn't start. It's the person you didn't become in the process of starting it. Building something, anything, changes how you see yourself. It builds evidence. Evidence that you can make something where nothing was before, even when everything feels broken. When you defer that, you don't just lose the thing. You lose the experience of discovering what you're capable of under pressure. And that discovery? You can't get it from waiting. Here's what you need to understand about chaos and creation. They are not opposites, they are historically partners. The printing press emerged from a Europe still reshaping itself after a century of plague and political collapse, a continent that had been broken open and was rebuilding what knowledge could mean. The Harlem Renaissance grew out of the brutality of the Great Migration. The transistor, the internet, the modern vaccine infrastructure, all of them products of urgency, of people working inside crisis rather than waiting beside it. The complexity theorist Stuart Kauffman developed a concept called the adjacent possible. He originally used it to describe how biological systems evolve, how at any given moment, there's a specific set of new configurations that become reachable only because of what just changed. He was writing about organisms and ecosystems. But the idea maps onto human creativity with uncomfortable precision. Crisis creates the adjacent possible. It clears old structures, forces new needs, puts unusual people in unusual proximity. The conditions that feel like they're destroying everything are often, quietly, making certain things buildable for the very first time. Think about it this way. The chaos in your life right now is not neutral. It is changing the landscape. New paths are opening precisely because old ones are closing. What you could build today, because of your specific experience of pressure, constraint, and disruption, is something that couldn't exist in calmer times. That's not inspiration. That's structural reality. And here's what changes when you start building in the middle of it. The act of creation doesn't require the chaos to stop. It requires you to redirect some of your attention. When you're building something, even something small, even imperfectly, you are no longer purely reactive. You are no longer just surviving the story happening to you. You are authoring a parallel one. There's a concept in cognitive behavioral therapy called behavioral activation, the idea that action doesn't follow motivation. Action produces it. You don't wait to feel ready to build. You build, and the act of building generates the feeling of agency you were waiting for. Building is not an escape from chaos. It is a response to it, and it's one of the few responses that actually changes you. So here's what you do. Today, not next week, not when the situation stabilizes today. You take the thing you've been deferring and you reduce it to its smallest possible first action. Not the finished product, not the plan. The first move. If it's a project, you open a document and write 3 sentences describing what you're building and why. If it's a creative work, you make one imperfect thing and you don't delete it. If it's a business, you say out loud to yourself or to someone else what problem you're trying to solve. That's it, that's the whole instruction. Not because it will fix the chaos, it won't. Not because it will be easy. It probably won't be. But because the version of you that's on the other side of this, more capable, more resilient, more certain of what you can do, that person doesn't get there by waiting for permission from a calmer world. They get there by choosing, in the middle of the wreckage, to build anyway. The ground is shaking. Your hands are unsteady. The timing is terrible. Build anyway.